Hi guys, my name is Sherman and this is Sherman Spectrum, where we get to talk about LGBTQ cinema, or where we get to talk about my favorite LGBTQ cinema around the world. And in today's video we are going to be taking a look at one of my favorite films from 2017, and that is God's Own Country. Now, God's Own Country is a 2017 British romantic film which was written and directed by Francis Lee. Now, for those of you that do not know, this is actually kind of like an autobiography about his life, but not his queer life in Yorkshire, but more about Francis Lee growing up on a farm and what farm life was like in this very isolated country where you have really unforgiving weather. You gotta like basically farm the land for your own food. And being gay, he kind of wanted to tell a story about these two men that come in from opposite worlds and how they basically meet. Now, the film got to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2017, and then was later released on the 23rd of September. Now, of course, the film was banned from certain countries like Malaysia, China, some Arab countries, I believe, and I think Romania was the only Eastern European country that actually had the film screened. Now, talking about our two main protagonists, Alex Sereneu, played by Yorgi, and Johnny Saxby, or Josh O'Connor, who plays Johnny Saxby. Now, what's interesting about this film is that it's probably the only film on my channel that has a happy ending. Yay! Finally a happy queer film. And there are plenty out there, I just needed to finally work my way up to it. And I really wanted to talk about this film from 2017 because although Call Me By Your Name kind of basically stole the limelight in 2017, I do feel like God's Own Country was very much robbed of its essence, if that's even a word. I think that it's definitely a film that's been overlooked in terms of queer cinema, and I do believe that it is free to stream on Amazon Prime, so you guys can check that out. So basically, we get to meet Johnny Saxby. Johnny Saxby is a 20-something young lad who basically has the responsibility of running the farm, seeing as his father, Martin, has suffered a stroke. So therefore, his father is not really able to do any of the hard manual labor, such, mending brick walls or brick fences, building gates, looking after the lambs and the sheep, and basically doing all of the chores. What his father actually really does is just boss Johnny around and kind of sees Johnny as a disappointment. Now, Johnny knows this and basically kind of goes on this verge of binge drinking and having casual sex with random men, and he's very kind of closed off when it comes to intimacy and any form of sexual contact. So when he does engage in any sort of quote-unquote sexual contact, he is very distant and doesn't really want to get any emotions involved. He's very emotionless in the film. And we basically get to see him going out every single night, binge drinking, and knowingly very well that he has to, wake up early in the morning, take care of the farm, and even gets to a point that on one of his binge night drinking, he is not there to help a sheep, or I think it's a mare. No, it's a horse. I'm not quite sure what animal it is, but I do believe that it's a sheep. And while the sheep is actually giving birth to the lamb dies because of Johnny's absence. And because of this, his father is extremely disappointed. Now, lambing season is coming up, and because of Johnny's father having a stroke and not really being able to physically go up the mountain, they hire or they place an ad for a farm worker to come and help out on the farm. Of course, Johnny is super against this and resents having anybody else coming onto the farm, as this would clearly show his father that, maybe another man working on the farm might actually be more better than he is. And this is kind of something that he is kind of resenting. So therefore enter Yorgi. Now, Yorgi is a Romanian migrant worker who was the only worker who applied to work on the farm, seeing as that for Yorgi, this was his opportunity to actually leave Romania, as he felt that he would never get the chance to leave. So when he applied and got accepted, he was kind of very happy and didn't miss the opportunity to get the job. Now, right from the beginning, Johnny and Yorgi kind of seem to have a really tricky, intense relationship, as Johnny starts calling him nicknames, even calling him Gypsy a couple of times. And Yorgi in the beginning kind of just lets this slide, but once they're finally up alone on the mountain, where it's just the two of them, we kind of get to see how Yorgi kind of basically attacks Johnny and tackles him to the ground and tells him that if he continues to call him Gypsy, that he will kind of mess with him the same way that Johnny is messing with Yorgi. Now, of course, since this encounter, both of them kind of just seem to work in peace. They eat their noodles around the fire, kind of quietly, kind of like Brokeback Mountain vibes here. But eventually there seems to be this tranquil peace between the two of them until, Johnny, Big Johnny, tries to, how can I put this, physically attack him in a very sexual way. So he tries to, so what starts out as a fight eventually turns into something very sexual, and the two of them basically have an encounter. And the next morning, the two of them basically kind of pretend, or at least in Johnny's point, pretends that this encounter never really happened, because this is kind of something that Johnny is used to. He's kind of used to very quick wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of encounters. But, for Yorgi, he also felt that this was very impersonal and very not intimate. I think that's a word, very not intimate. And since the encounter, we kind of get to see how Johnny and Yorgi begin a more closer relationship. They're starting to share their food more, they're starting to sit more closer together at the fire, they're even starting to share cigarettes. And, there's this very playful banter that happens between the two of them where they both call each other the F word in a very playful way. And what soon later happens is that they finally do have a more passionate encounter where, Yorgi actually teaches Johnny how to kiss. And I do believe that this is actually Johnny's first real kiss with a man. So continues, the two men basically end up having a love affair or a relationship. And basically once they head back down to the farm, Johnny and Yorgi's been kind of living in a caravan. So he's not living in the house. So he's been living in a caravan that doesn't really have any heat, and it's quite cold since that this is, the northern side of Yorkshire. And although the scenery of the film is very, very, very beautiful, I almost personally feel like while watching this, you could literally feel the cold when watching the film. So while Yorgi is living in the caravan, Johnny basically tries to ask Yorgi if he would like to move in with him into the house. And of course, Yorgi declines and says that this isn't really a good thing. He's a foreigner. It wouldn't really go well with the local people in England. And Johnny kind of takes this bad or poorly and kind of goes on a binge drinking. He basically resorts back to his old habits and goes around drinking again, and of course engaging in sexual encounters with other men. Yorgi eventually finds this out and kind of just leaves. And so while this is actually happening, Johnny's father actually ends up having a second stroke, which kind of leaves him even worse, where he's even struggling to even have a conversation. And this is a kind of where I actually really felt sorry for Johnny, because with Yorgi gone, he now actually has to finally accept the full responsibility of looking after the farm. which is basically what he does. And we kind of get to see this whole shift in his character. He stops drinking and he starts to pay a lot more attention to the farm. He starts taking care of the bills. You know, he really starts really putting a lot of work into the farm, and even to the point that he's even overworking himself, to the point that his grandmother basically has to tell him that he needs to take a break. And you know, we kind of get to see these moments where there are pieces of clothing of Georgi's lying around, and he feels it and he touches it and he even puts them on, trying to remember the smell of Georgi. So there's a very powerful scene that happens where he finally gets to talk to his father and basically tells his father that he's sorry for being such a screw up and that he wishes that he could change, and that he actually wants things to change on the farm, and that he's going back to go and get Georgi. And his father basically thinks that he's trying to run away out of his duties, but he's very adamant and tells his father that he will return, but he does need the help. And if he does bring Georgi back, that things need to change on the farm. And what I liked about his father is that his father just says, or asks him a question, you know, would this make you happy, or does Georgi make you happy? And he says yes, and his father just gives him the go ahead to go and get Georgi. So Georgi by this time is working in Scotland, and Johnny basically gets on a bus, travels for I don't know how many hours to Scotland, and eventually finds Georgi, and has a really hard time trying to explain how much of a screw up he really is and what he did, and basically makes these really, you know, like unimportant conversations, telling him how he's been looking after the farm, how he's gotten antiseptics for the sheep. And you know, Georgi's just standing there like, okay, sure, you know what, whatever, it's fine, you know, do what you want to do. But then eventually he plucks up the courage to tell him that he's really, really sorry about what happened, and that he really wants Georgi to come back. And you know, instead of having this very long, outdrawn conversation about it's your fault and you messed up, and you know, but what, oh yes, I forgot to mention, he does kind of finally stand up for himself and basically tells Georgi that he doesn't want to be a screw up anymore, and he wants to be a better version of himself. And that's basically the first time that we kind of get to see Georgi also looking at Johnny as a person who is also willing to change, and just kind of forgives him instantly on the spot. The two make up, the two share a very beautiful, passionate kiss, and basically head back to the farm in Yorkshire, where the caravan where Georgi has been staying in is swiftly drifted away, probably sold, and they finally get to live in the house together as men. Now, brilliant, beautiful film, and quite a very happy ending. You know, the film, like I mentioned, what the writer and director Francis Lee mentioned in the film is that, you know, the film is very simple and very simplistic. There's not too much overlaying cinematography. It's not Call Me by Your Name, for example, which is its own beautiful cinematic masterpiece, where God's Own Country is more based on the authenticity of working life on a farm and the hardships of, or basically the responsibility that it takes to work on a farm. But it's not more just about that, but it's also a love story between these two men, and how Georgi basically taught Johnny how to become a better version of himself, be better, treat his father and his grandmother with more respect, and also learning to have respect for himself and love for himself. Now, there are quite similarities, like I've said, between God's Own Country and Brokeback Mountain. I was actually planning on making a 3-part series with God's Own Country, Brokeback Mountain, and A Moment in the Reeds, seeing as they all have quite similar tropes when it comes to men being isolated and end up having and developing these so-called love relationships. But not to make this video too long, Right, so that's it for today's video. So if you guys would like to see more content like this, please remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification button, as it really does help with the algorithm. And I will definitely see you guys in another video. My name is Sherman, and this has been Sherman Spectrum, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.